Hello and welcome to this edition of FiTV. I'm your host, Brad Swanson. We are coming to you on the day before the end of the regularly scheduled session. Although we know it's going to go long, we are today joined by Anthony Pedicini, an amazing campaign consultant, runs SimWins, and known for your expertise on the campaign battlefield. What are we going to talk about?
I don't know. I think session's ending, so we're going to have campaign starting. So my vacation ends,
right,
pretty much.
Right.
And we're going to hit the ground running. We had a conference call today, actually, about how we're going to do some grassroots change-ups with coronavirus.
Right.
Everyone's talking about coronavirus.
Right. Door to door.
Door to door is going to change a little bit. We have all of our plans made for campaign season, but they may adjust a little bit.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a fun season, as it always is in Florida.
It's always exciting. It's always exciting. Before we really jump into what that battleground in Florida is going to look like, let's talk about President Galvano. I know you're very close to him. You know, what was your take on his parting speech, if you will?
Well, this is my first client that has served a whole term in the House and then a whole term in the Senate. And it's 18 years in the making. I've been here for 20. So,
right.
So basically, Bill Galvano and I have been doing this stuff together for my whole career.
Right.
I don't think that he will be replaced in this process. I think if people really think about from 2002 to 2020 in the state of Florida, every major fight, every major kerfluffle that came up in the legislature,
right.
A Senate president or a speaker said, Galvano, handle it.
Right.
Whether it was gaming, whether it was Bright Futures, whether it was Parkland, whether it was redistricting, Galvano's been in the middle of it, and he solved all those problems. Made it look effortlessly, by the way. Make it look. It was totally easy.
Right.
And Florida's better as a result of it. I'm curious to see, as some of those members who have done now, in the age of term limits, a full term in the House and a full term in the Senate, as they leave, how that changes the process. I think that's yet to be determined.
Right.
But we're going to live it.
Right.
And I'm excited for that. I'm sad to see him leave, but I'm excited for the new.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about your take on him, because you've been closer to him than so many people in this process. And you know, when you think of his skill at the process, you know, how do you characterize Bill Galvano when you think of him as the master of the process?
Yeah, I think that he's a total statesman, right? So I think by empowering members the way he has over his term in the House and his term in the Senate, he strengthened the process.
Yeah.
So when something went down that was probably not going to get done, right? Because members believed in him, they believed that he believed in them. Mm-hmm. They worked 10 times as hard to solve the problem, and the problem got solved.
Yeah. I noticed really with this particular Senate, the balance between the Democrats and the Republicans, and by balance I mean the equality, if you will,
sure.
of who's allowed at the table on any given issue. You know, it's believe it or not, my take, it looks less partisan. I know there's still partisan issues, obviously, but it seems like, everybody's really happy with their president.
Members are members to the president, no matter what party they're from.
Yeah.
He treated them that way, and you saw that today in his farewell.
Well, and you look at what he had to shepherd. I mean, you think of the challenges as well within the chamber over the years.
How do you pass gun control with a Republican-controlled Senate?
Right.
How do you do that? How do you do, with the closest margin we've ever had, we've passed 2 years of life bills that are pro-life. He did that with the closest margin any Senate president has had. Right. And that's because he had the respect and the admiration of the chamber. It's something we probably won't see again.
Yeah. Well, and here's what we know about President Galvano is he's not going to be far from the process.
No, he'll be right here.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, it's in his blood.
100%.
So we look forward to his next iteration
I look forward to it too.
the game. I know you do. Well, let's talk about the game that you're about to go play.
Sure.
This is the 2020 elections. This is obviously, like every election, the most important election that we've ever had. Talk to us about the races that you see that are going to be tight, close, in play, or
sure.
that people might perceive they're in play, but you already feel you've got it won.
I think there's some surprises. I think you're going to see that with Biden as the nominee versus Sanders, some seats may be in play that weren't. Maybe some seats that were in play are not anymore. I think that changes the dynamic on the field quite a bit. I still think we have some House races that just as a function of Florida changing and Florida growing. In Central Florida, you're going to have some Republicans that were in safe seats that are not.
Right.
You're going to have, David Smith is an important member to bring back. Mike Russo is an important member to bring back. Jackie Toledo is an important.
Close.
Those are razor-thin races.
Yeah.
Fedorov, razor-thin race.
Yeah.
I don't think those members are going to be without resources they need or without the messaging they need. I mean, you talk about these guys ending session here. We've had some tremendous victories that we could talk to the people of Florida about that these guys have passed. The biggest teacher pay raise in history. The Democrats tried to scuttle. I think we're still going to get it done. E-Verify, a huge issue for independents and Republicans. You just have some tremendous wins that I think the minority party didn't see doesn't feel they're going to be using the campaign, but they will.
Right, they will. It'll be fascinating. I tell you what, and you think about those razor tight races, and let's take Caruso for example. His opponent that narrowly lost is back at it again, and you think about how tight that race was. I mean, you know, how does the national election play into that race?
Well, it plays. I mean, the national election plays completely every time we run these races in a presidential year.
Right.
There's definitely an updraft and a downdraft.
Right.
Stronger than in a non-presidential year. I think, though, that the fact that Representative Caruso is now an incumbent gives him a much bigger leg up than the last time when it was an open seat. And I think that Bonfiglio, who was his opponent last time, who again is his opponent, is a flawed candidate.
Right.
He has a tremendous amount of flaws, and I think Mike's.
Well, you can say that.
No,
obviously,
I can, but I think Mike Caruso's done, and I represent Mike Caruso in fairness.
Right.
But I think Mike's done a tremendous job of balancing his votes in the legislature for his district, and because he was thoughtful that way, he'll be more successful electorally.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, as a representative, you can't find somebody with more energy. And I mean,
he's always dressed really well.
When I think old school energy, I mean, he's like, I'm not sure if he even sleeps.
That's his wife.
Yeah.
His wife is his energy.
Tracy,
I'm telling you.
Tracy definitely, she brings the heat for sure. Yeah. So that's great.
We have some tough races in the House. I mean, I think locally you see some counties in Florida that are changing. Hillsborough is definitely more of a Democratic county than it was.
Right.
Pinellas is kind of.
I don't know anything about Hillsborough County.
Well, I know you don't. Yeah, you having run in Hillsborough County. When you ran, it was a Republican county.
It's a very different world.
Now it's a D+11.
Yep.
Pinellas is a much more red county. Pasco, you know, the more we build apartments in Florida, you see this kind of blue trend from certain places. But Republicans seem to have, the message-wise, locally, they've seemed to transcended that change in a lot of places. And I think we'll continue to do that in the legislature.
It's interesting, you know, when you think about it, you know, people would assume that Florida has more Republicans than Democrats, but on registration, the Democrats utterly are 200,000. Is it 200,000 or 400,000 more registered Democrats?
It's a lot, but
it's who turns out.
But when it is who turns out. But when the Democrats use that talking point to say Florida should be a blue state, what they forget is those Democrats in the Panhandle are not liberals. They're conservatives. They just happen to be Democrats. They're blue dog Democrats. They vote for President Trump. They voted for President Bush. They voted against President Obama. That's where that margin is, and that's made up in the Panhandle. And you saw that, I think, in the gubernatorial election last time. The margin was made up when those votes came in the Panhandle. You can't underestimate the power of that.
Well, let's look at the no party affiliates. That number is growing, and you've got no party taking over the secondary party in more than a few counties in Florida.
Yeah, in Hillsborough, that'll be the case here in a couple of years.
So how do you get to them?
You know, you get to them. It costs a lot of money. And you know, we have these pool of people. People really think that we spend all this money on elections talking to everybody. Well, we don't. There's this really small, narrow group of persuadables in all these elections that we talk about. They're the people that get the mail, that get the phone calls, that get the knocks on the door. And they're the ones that complain come election day, well, oh my God, I got all this mail. I got all these people kept bothering me over and over again. That's because they're persuadable. We know through an algorithm, or we know through your voting pattern, or we know through your registration or past habits that you're the one we have to convince to vote for our candidate. A great example of that. When Ed Hooper ran against Amanda Murphy. I think it was Amanda Murphy, right? Yeah.
I believe it was,
in the Senate race over in Pinellas and Pasco. There was a very small group of persuadables that were going to change that race. And we talked to them. And we talked to them more than the other campaign did, and we had a more effective message. And now Ed he's Senator Hooper now instead of Representative Hooper.
Great guy. Glad that he's back after being a great pro-business House member.
Great race, but it's a good way to show that if you target your message to the right people, you can turn a race on its head and win.
And there's not a single race out there that's a gimme. You know, when you think of
not in Florida,
the ones that are in the balance of our voting electorate.
Not on I-4, not in the areas that decide who runs the legislature. No, sir.
Right. That should be interesting. Well, so we're seeing Speaker Oliva terming out. You know, what's your take on Speaker Oliva's time in office? You know, if you had to sum it up in a few words.
I think the thing that will be remembered about both Oliva and Galvano is the relationship they had collectively. These are two guys who, as they ascended in the process, they kept a close relationship and they kept close counsel with each other. They met all the time, and many people probably don't know that, but these guys were always meeting and talking. They always kind of had their plan gamed out together. There never was a disagreement you saw in public, even sometimes you thought the speaker was going off script. I think that was all part of the plan, honestly. I think people remember Speaker Oliva and President Galvano for the way that they ran the chambers together.
Yeah, it's a new day with that style of leadership, and it almost harkens back to when Will Weatherford and President Gates, traveled the state ahead of time and kind of, set the tone. While they know they're two adversarial chambers, it doesn't have to be personally adversarial.
These guys, maybe you give this to Jose, Speaker Oliva, for these guys had a mutual understanding that they never deviated from, no matter what happened.
Yeah.
And I think Speaker Oliva has a I don't know, he has kind of like an air about him, right? That is just he just builds camaraderie wherever he goes.
Yeah.
He's a man's man.
Yeah.
And I think that is what he'll be remembered for in the House. He ran a great House. That was a tight ship over there.
It was a tight ship.
And now we got Senator Simpson coming up and Speaker Designate Sprouse, two guys from the same region of the world who have but
very different personalities.
Very different personalities, but still very close in relationship. So I think hopefully we'll have another 2 years of congeniality between the two chambers, which will lead to successes for the governor and the Republican legislature.
That's going to depend on how good you are, Anthony, and the rest of the guys in your business.
I think we'll keep the chambers.
Yeah, you think so?
I do.
All right. Well, Anthony, thanks for coming on. We value our partnership with you. We're grateful for all the revenue that your campaign spend through our members.
We have no choice.
And more importantly, you've been a good friend for a long time.
I appreciate
you coming on.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it. That's all the time we have for this episode. Make sure you hit us up on our social media to see more great interviews like this one. And for now, thanks for tuning in.